to community comments or member questions, comments at that point. So I did note that we have a quorum in terms of the board members present, and I'll start off with the first order of business, which is approval of the minutes. I had circulated to the board. There were actually the last 2 months, the meetings were January 9th, 2024 and February 13th, 2024. So does anyone on the board have comments or edits or anything I missed or got your attendance wrong or anything like that?
No, I'll make a motion to approve both minutes.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. Someone second?
I can second.
All right, thank you. All those in favor? All right, good. I didn't check. Hopefully our posting was up to date of the minutes up through December. So, but we'll get these last two posted on the website as well. All right, so let's see. Treasurer's report. I think, Bob, do you just want to give a quick revenue or membership dues collected, something, where are we, March? So
Yeah, so revenue through today on the new membership platform is just over $3,000. It was $1,790 in January, 735 in February, and 545 through today. So we're
okay,
running behind what it might have been, but our expenses are much lower since we're not paying for cleanup. So
we're not paying cleanup or bookkeeping, right?
or bookkeeping,
Compared to last
just
year.
accounting and insurance expenses.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's run through committee reports. Russell, anything on membership and development?
Sure. So last Monday, so 8 days ago, fellow board member and sort of membership co-chair Katie Lowe and I, as well as community member Kayla, her last name escapes me, met, and we continued working on new marketing materials for membership that Kayla and I believe will use when we go around on a membership drive this spring. We also, Kayla Coteles, yes, thank you, Katie. She's a physical therapist here in the neighborhood. We also discussed membership levels and the possibility or just simplifying those. And am I forgetting anything, Katie? I think that's pretty much it.
We were talking about doing some things with business membership. I think that's part of what you meant by simplifying membership levels. We're going to just cut it down to one, which does everything for anyone who's a business member. And we're also trying to put together, seeing if there is interest in a business members group, which I guess I can just talk about real quick. Just like anyone who is a business owner in Washington Square West, basically just get folks together to get to know each other. I mean, probably people who run businesses are, I imagine, very busy, and might not actually know a lot of other businesses in the neighborhood, or across the neighborhood. So talking about possibly forming a group, sort of mutual support, talking about things, sharing resources, and maybe the Civic being able to bring in some resources like folks from the city, from the Commerce Department, or maybe the police department to help them solve or work on some things that may not be working for them as business owners in Wash West. But this is, if you are interested, please let us know at washwestcivic@gmail.com. So far, nobody's emailed, but it's early.
Okay, thank you, Russell and Katie. Casey is not here, also not able to make it. I'm not aware of anything new on the government or on that front. How about Deb? Do you have anything on greening or gardens or the season
I
approaching?
do, yes. So we have gathered membership. We've solicited interested gardeners. So
Mhm,
we're in the process of filling our plots.
mhm.
We have 4 vacancies at South Street, 2 Waverly, and 2 at Sartain. So that is, we have a total of 80 plots within all 3 of our gardens. So of those 80 plots, we have those vacancies. So we're in the process of going down our waiting list and filling those.
Mhm.
And that's all I have, but Peter, you might have something too. I don't know if this would be the right time under greening for Peter Code to give an update. It's up to you, Drew. Just didn't want that to get lost.
Yeah, no, thank you, Deb. It's a good segue because Peter, I know, well, I think maybe have a few words about an update on trash and sidewalk cleaning, and that goes, I
Sure.
guess, closely.
Okay, Drew.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Debs. So we had our first meeting of the Action on Trash Subcommittee, the newly formed one, earlier last month, which you may remember from the last board call.
Mhm.
We have our next one on Thursday evening. If anyone wants to join that as a member and contribute to that committee, you're very welcome. Please contact me. My email address is in the newsletter. I'll also put it in the chat. I have had some approaches since the last newsletter and expressions of interest, particularly in the block captain program. Now, you may remember that I spoke about this last time. We established through the Philadelphia More Beautiful Committee that oversees this program for the whole of Philadelphia, that even though there are more than 6,000 block captains in Philadelphia, and it's a program that's been proudly run for many decades, there were 0, and there are currently 0 block captains in Wash West. I was keen to get this corrected because there are certain blocks that are not, predominantly business blocks. They are residential, and we all know they have problems with trash. And they're not necessarily generated by homeowners or residents or renters, but it's a complicated problem. And it could take some block captains to help resolve it from the bottom up, as well as support from the city, from the top down, if you like. So the good news is that not only have I had some expressions of interest from others in the community to become block captains, but I've also made progress with the PMBC, Philadelphia More Beautiful Committee, to issue us with the first petitions. And that's the process by which you become a block captain. You get hold of a petition, and then you have to knock on doors and make contact with your neighbors and get support from 51% or more of those neighbors on the block to qualify as a block captain. Then you're approved by the city and you're official, and you get a badge, and you get support from the city as well with block cleanups. There's more on that in the newsletter, so I won't go into more detail unless anybody wants it. But we had our first 2 petition forms distributed, delivered by PMBC last week. One was to me for the 1100 block on Spruce, and one was to Margaret Emerson, who's on the 1300 block on Spruce. So this is really very good news. And so now Margaret and I are in the process of rustling up signatures. So that's the block captain process. If anybody else is interested in becoming a block captain, please email me. And I will help you. But essentially, it is a conversation that has to happen directly between the volunteer and the PMBC office. Second thing to say is that I attended the block captain rally, even though I'm not a recognized block captain. And this is an annual event that took place at the Please Touch Museum in Fairmount Park on Saturday. And the keynote address at the block captain rally, which was attended by nearly 1,000 people, most of whom are block captains, the keynote address was given by Sherelle Parker. And most of you will know that she made it a big part of her manifesto that cleaning was going to be a top priority, and that she was going to find the budget to make it not only a top priority, but to deliver on it. So she has made some budget commitments, and you may know that the budget is soon to be approved at City Hall, discussed and approved. And if her budget proposals go forward, there will be extra funding for that to happen, and particularly from our point of view, for commercial corridor cleaning. You may know that there are at least three commercial corridors that overlap and take up a significant proportion of the Wash West boundaries. And so there are three different commercial corridors that we can apply for funding for. We have made an initial approach for that funding, and we've been told that it's going to be later in the year. And the reason I believe that it's going to be a little later in the year before those applications can be accepted for grants is that we're waiting on that budget to be approved. The second thing to say about the budget, Sherelle Parker's budget, is that she is looking for extra funding for licensing and inspections. Now, one of the big complaints that we've all been making is that there's been next to no enforcement of licensing and inspections, and there have been consequences, a lot to do with construction. And I know this isn't so much to do with trash on the streets, but it is connected. The consequence of extra funding for licensing and inspections is that there should be much more inspection of properties, particularly ones that are being developed or abandoned and mishandled, and also that the trash that is often associated with those developments is kept under control. So those are the main things to report. As I say, there will be another meeting of the subcommittee on Thursday, so do get in touch with me if you would like to attend. That will be by Google Meet.
Thank you, Peter. Lynn, looks like Lynn Landis, do you have your hand up? Do you want to?
Yes, I was a block captain, not exactly elected, but volunteered. And I have to say that you can have a block captain and they sit there, they have the title and they do nothing. I was at that ceremony. To me, and I've approached Councilman Squilla more than twice about this issue, is that the public at large is not aware of their responsibility for their sidewalk to keep it clean. They really aren't. And so that if they would send with the real estate tax bill, if they would send a notice that this is your property that you must maintain to include your sidewalk, that would be extremely helpful. If we also had plaques on our street poles reminding people that they are responsible for their side, that would be very helpful. There are no public service announcements either. So people honestly need to be educated that this is their responsibility to keep the. Now, the law only says sidewalk. It doesn't say curb. So a lot of people will sweep their stuff off the sidewalk into the curb. And I honestly think the zoning regulations, the code, should include the curb as well as the sidewalk. So it's you know, it sounds great to have block captains, but my experience has been, you know, that on Jessup Street, we're all very cognizant of keeping the gutters clean, and we'll go down several households and clean it. One street over, not attacking you people on Quince, but you don't sweep. It's a mess. And I don't know who they think is going to sweep, but they don't, you know, and they should know that that is part of their responsibility to keep their sidewalks and honestly their curbs clear of. And so I think, Peter, what we might do is education, like when we're doing a drop off to get more members door to door and all of that, that should be included. Did you know you're responsible for your sidewalks and things like that? But I think it's got to be a more universal education, rather than to rely on block captains who say they're going to do it and then they don't do anything. And everyone sits back and waits for the block captain to tell them what to do next. That's my experience. Okay, I'll let you go.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Barbara, did you have a comment?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, great. Lynn, I concur with you, and I think getting our streets cleaner, I mean, it's going to be challenging. I think some of it has to do with the demographic that lives in our neighborhood. I think 60% of the people who live in our neighborhood are renters. We have lots of students, transient. I don't see a lot of families with kids in our neighborhood. I think it's a tougher neighborhood maybe than most to keep clean, but I think it's multi-pronged, like you said. I think we need more commercial corridor cleaning. We need much, much better enforcement. I mean, we can start by we can go light and start and by telling people what businesses and residents, what they need to do. And, my feeling is we tell them, and if they still can't do the proper thing, then I think we have to start enforcing and giving people tickets. But that actually isn't what I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about is finding extra funding, extra money for commercial corridor cleaning. I mean, right now, the only thing we've tapped into is public funds from the city, the Department of Commerce. I was thinking about getting private funds, donations from the big fish only for commercial corridor cleaning. And by big fish, I mean the real estate developers like Pearl Properties, Dranoff. And Jonathan, I'm going to tie you in with this. I don't go to all the zoning meetings, but I feel that when you write letters of non-opposition to help entities get zoning variances in our neighborhood, we don't get a community benefit back. For example, you just wrote a non-opposition letter for Pearl Properties. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so Pearl Properties, if people don't know, it's that ginormous, how many stories is that Pearl
It's
Properties?
the Jewelers Row high rise.
Yeah, okay. That, you wrote a letter of non-opposition, it's Pearl Properties. We have gotten no community benefit out of that. What the community is going to get is a lot of tourists. And then, if anyone's Jewish here, that means what? It means pain. There's going to be construction at that site for years to come. And that's right on the corner of where our wonderful Washington Square Park is. So people who like to go to the park and get some peace and quiet and sit and picnic, they're going to have years of hearing excavation, drilling, the whole thing. And those trucks that are back and forth on the streets, they make a lot of noise, a lot of dirt, a lot of litter. We're not getting any kind of community benefit for these big developers like Pearl Properties, Dranoff on Broad and Spruce, right? Did you write a non-opposition letter for Dranoff on Spruce and Pearl? No, Spruce and Broad.
The Civic Association did. I was not specifically involved in that one, but yes.
Okay, that's another one. We should be getting a community benefit and they should be donating to us for commercial corridor cleaning. Citizens Bank, you just wrote a non-opposition letter for Citizens Bank to paint a mural on a wall at Market and 7th.
They are actually giving money to McCall as part of that.
Who?
McCall Schools.
Okay, so we should have gotten a community benefit out of that too for commercial corridor cleaning. I mean, I can go down the list.
Well,
and
Barbara,
give
here's a
names.
suggestion.
So that's so here, can I finish? Here's
Yep.
what I'd like to propose, and the board can think about it, and we can, talk to Tammy about it. I would like to get from you a list of non-opposition letters that you've wrote like in the last 3 years. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to draw up, we have a very, very good letter writer on our trash subcommittee right now. I'd like to draft up a letter and I'd like to send these letters to all these entities that have gotten zoning variance and non-opposition letters from you, because I think it's time for them to give back to us. And commercial corridor cleaning is really, really important. And I can't imagine that they're going to say no to having their street cleaned. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Again, this is the concept of community benefits agreement has come up the last couple meetings. It generally has not come up specifically at the zoning meetings, but it's something that I don't know, Pete, Philip, it is not. But I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. It's something that we should definitely, definitely consider. I know that the project at 11th and Walnut has a community benefits agreement in place if that project should ever happen. And again, it's certainly something we could pursue. And again,
Yeah.
it's just, we look to folks asking for it.
We're not getting our streets cleaned anymore. I
Right,
mean,
understood.
we really have to find ways to make money, and I really think the big fish, private donors, the big fish, I really think that they would be happy to contribute to keeping our streets neat and clean.
Now one thing to note, being frequent when we've had look for money for the Civic, we've gone to the developers and asked for money and received it. So that's the other part. We can just ask them up for and get money, and typically we will. So that's something that can be done.
And like I said, I'd like this, I'm on the trash subcommittee, so want this money to be earmarked for commercial corridor cleaning. Because I think it's vital. We really, really need money to get our streets.
And the only thing is it's trickier when someone's in the center city district, in the center city district proper, so north of Walnut, because they're actually already paying into it, but still it's something we certainly look into.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I think it's fair to say that I mean, Barbara, thank you for those contributions, but I think it's fair to say that it's not just about commercial corridors, because although there are at least 3 commercial corridors that overlap with our boundaries, there are parts of Wash West that are not defined as commercial corridors, and yet they do have a trash problem. So I think we need to we want to look at this holistically and not leave out those clearly residential blocks that have got a problem. And it's not always the residents who are producing that problem. A lot of it is related to trash that's put out at the right time for the weekly collections, and then gets ravaged by both the homeless and the desperate, and by rats, and that creates a lot of extra litter problem, trash problem that you can't expect the Department of Streets to pick up on a weekly collection.
Right. No, absolutely. It couldn't. The money that we could raise would be for the other streets too that are non-commercial. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Barbara. We will. That's going to be in the minutes. It'll be talked about by the board. I think it's worth considering. We should do that, even if it's not a CBA. Going back to folks who have developed here already. I mean, they do have money and should contribute. So
yeah, absolutely.
Drew, if I can jump in, Philip had a question about support from developers, and in the last several years, we've really had no money come in from developers. That the last time, I think maybe when Meg was president, she did a campaign targeting developers, and we did get money, but we haven't that I can recall in the last 3 to 5 years.
Well,
it's something we can retarget. Agreed, it's something we should look into.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Has Richard Lee joined? I didn't see him. Was anybody at the latest police meeting? Any report on safety or policing?
Drew, I was there if nobody else was.
Hi, Peter.
Hi.
Go ahead. Do you mind just giving a brief summary?
No, not at all. A couple of interesting things came up. One is, if people don't know, the 6th police district that we are all, Wash West is part of, is combining with the 9th district, which is basically on the other side of Broad, the same north-south boundaries, being combined into one big police district. It'll be called the 9th. That's taking place tentatively on May 1st. There will still be, within that district, there will still be 5 PSAs, which are police service areas. There used to be a total of 6 between the 2 districts, so there's going to be 5 plus the Center City district. of most interest to Wash West people. One of those PSAs will be from the Delaware River to 8th Street, from Lombard to Vine. And then the next one is from 8th Street to 18th Street, from Lombard to Vine. Those two PSAs, or all the PSAs within the district, will typically have the same police officers in them, every day. So, it's not like they're going to start having people from the far west side of the 4th District or the 9th District come over to the 6th District. So it should be more or less the same officers that we've seen around. Anyway, that's a big change that's coming. The other thing that came up, there was some concerns about the mayor's effort to, clean up Kensington, and what's going to happen to all those people that get pushed out of Kensington. Are they going to come down into our area and, cause trouble, or whatever? And the police's response to that was that whatever they do in Kensington, the police in the new 9th District are going to do the same things, so that the troublemakers or whatever that come down from Kensington will not see this area as, oh, this is a place I can go and hang out and panhandle and cause problems, and then go back someplace else and do my drugs. So they're going to do everything they can. There's been a lot of internal discussions about how to make our area not look like a place for people in Kensington to come down to hang out. What else did they talk about? Oh, the other thing they talked about, they're also, I guess they know a lot of the retail theft in our area feeds the drug habits of people in, the money anyway, for people in Kensington. So they are cracking down on retail theft. They figured out a way to, a lot of the problem has been our DA that when they turn somebody in, the DA just lets them go. So they figured out a way how to combine a lot of these individual thefts that are done over and over by the same people into a grouping, and then they can charge them as a felony as opposed to a misdemeanor. And once they have a felony, the Krasner can't look the other way and say, well, this is a first-time offender or whatever. So they're having a lot of success with that. For those of you who are retailers, they talked about an app called the GroupMe, GRUPME app, that allows you to, and I'm not clear on I don't know anything about it personally, but somehow it allows you to communicate directly with the police department and send them video, send them pictures, communicate with them directly about a theft that is going on in your building. Or if you know that, this person comes in and hits me regularly, when you see that person come in, you can then very quietly get on your app and communicate with the police. And they've been having a lot of success with arresting people through that app. So something to look into. I think that was kind of the extent of it.
All right.
Any questions? Yeah.
So thank you for that, Peter. Did they say, I presume the community meeting will be combined with the 9th District? That's like
no, actually they have, the 9th had their own community liaison, like Joe Ferrara is for ours. And as far as they know, both community relations officers are being retained.
Okay.
And they think they're going to continue more or less doing what they're doing now with one on the, former 6th District, one in the former 9th District, just because of familiarity. And there's so many different neighborhood community organizations and whatnot that they kind of want to keep it separate and familiar.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Lynn, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yes, well, wait a minute. Okay, I'm speaking.
You're good. Yep.
Yeah, so I have a little a website and some people who help me out with, and my husband, called safestreetsphilly.org. And done a lot of, speaking with the police, with Councilman Squilla there and other things. Maybe I should preface this, and maybe we can talk about this later, but really when we want to bring subjects up to the Civic, we need to be able to get it on the agenda. And I don't know how we're supposed to get things on the agenda. I've never seen an agenda. And I sent something to Tammy. I didn't realize she wasn't going to be here. So I sent it to Katie at the very last minute. So she may not have had time to send it on to you, but some of my comments were on safety issues.
Okay.
And we keep getting, I talked to the police chief for District 6, plus Joe Ferraro, plus another veteran, and they're all saying the same thing. They will not arrest people who keep coming back to the same place. And basically we're talking about our mentally ill homeless. And they keep telling me they can't arrest them, they're not arresting them. And we, keep calling in on the same people over and over again. So it sounds as though, is this Peter who gave the report? Who gave the report on this?
On the trash?
On the
subcommittee?
safety.
Oh, safety was Peter. Yes, Peter first.
Peter, okay. So it sounds like that app and raising things to the level of a felony sounds like going in the right direction. But we're desperate. I mean, we've got really crazy people haunting our neighborhood day after day. We keep calling, they get moved around, but the police stand there and tell us, even though we're taxpayers and we're paying not only for them, but for Center City District that does even less, that you can't have these people around harassing local businesses. We've got this one guy, we got a couple guys. I met with 4 restaurant owners at Moriarty's who have this, one guy in particular who's dumping trash cans, doing all kinds of violent things, and they can't get him arrested. So this is really a huge problem. And I've got granddaughters who don't even want to go outside anymore because they go outside and they see a crazy person with a blanket over his shoulder. And that's not just one, it's several. So we have a real problem, particularly here next to the hospitals. I also had on my list that Jefferson, I talked to a couple of their security people who were bragging to me about, how they've doubled the force and they're doing all this stuff. If they've doubled the force, why almost every day now, I have to call on the corner of 11th and Locust and on the corner of 11th and Sansom because people are laying on the sidewalks. They're laying on the steam vents. What happened to the steam vent covers? Well, one of the police told me that the company that owns the steam in Philly, it's a private company, had them removed. Otherwise, they are very good at keeping the homeless from, laying on these steam covers. That's another big issue we need to get addressed. And Center City District, they have all these people walking around. Who knows what they're doing? But this is a colossal waste of money. Besides the fact, I don't think they come under the Sunshine Act. When do they have public meetings? They want to increase the charge, what they're charging our parking lot association. And yet those people who are supposed to be looking out for the homeless or whatever, they will not call 911. So they call homeless services that do nothing 90% of the time. And we're still left. So we're paying taxpayers' money to the police who don't get these people into facilities that they need. This one police officer, not to go on and on, but this one veteran police officer said to me, "Oh yeah, I've known that guy for 20 years. The guy is obviously nuts. So for 20 years, this mentally ill person has basically been abused and neglected by the people in Philadelphia, the government of Philadelphia, because as a parent of a adult son who's on Social Security disability, that person is due that service and that money. But by not arresting him, they can't identify him. So he's not getting any of that. And who's getting it? These wonderful nonprofits. They're getting the money to keep these unfortunate people on our streets. So anyway, number one, we need to know how to put things on the agenda so we can talk about these things in an orderly way and not have to go to all these different committee meetings. And number two, Jefferson Security should be at our meetings. The police should be at this meeting, not us go to their meeting where they make excuses and control the environment. And also the other one is that Center City District should be at our monthly meetings, this meeting, those three entities, because Center City District got paid money to hang banners about Temple University that has no presence in our neighborhood. That just didn't make any sense. And they didn't even, they should have at least passed it by you guys, but they didn't, you know, so these entities have a big impact on our neighborhood and they should be at your monthly meetings. And we should all be able to put our issues on the agenda. Thank you. So,
All right, thank you, Lynn.
okay.
Duly noted, as they say, and we will revisit that and respond. All right, let's see, I had, why don't we go to Vision Zero? Andrew, you want to give a quick update on couple of things happening there?
Sure. Yeah. So about 2 weeks ago on Monday, we had our first meeting ever. It was pretty good meeting. We had a good conversation. There were about a dozen or so people showing up, talking about some of the Vision Zero issues they've encountered, what they want to see changed. We will be having our next meeting
Andrew,
2 weeks from now.
It might be worthwhile to tell people what Vision Zero is, because I don't know if it's automatically understood by everyone.
Sure. Yeah. So it's basically
Good point,
making our
Jonathan.
streets safer, finding ways to prevent traffic collisions so nobody's injured or killed from getting hit by a car or something like that. And yeah, so our next meeting will be 2 weeks from now on March 25th at 6 p.m. There will be more information coming about that meeting soon. And then another update, at our last board meeting, we had a presentation from a group called Philly Bike Action about a proposal that they want us to support for changing Spruce and Pine streets. Specifically, they want us to sign a letter supporting changing the signage on the bike lane from no parking to no stopping. And they also want us to support changing a couple parking spots on the other side of the street from residential parking to loading zones, at least throughout the day. So we as the board are discussing that and we'll hopefully reach some sort of decision on that soon. And yeah, that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Andrew. All right, and I think zoning is next. Jonathan, we got a few actions?
Yeah, we have one thing to discuss. Let me share my screen so I can put it on the image. Okay, one project, which is 700 Rodman. Hope everyone's looking at a red brick building right now. Thank you. So the applicant is Marie Pfeiffer. They are seeking a variance to basically maintain the gate that you see there. It's a 9-foot tall gate when only a 6-foot gate is permitted by the zoning code. She came to us in January but hadn't properly flyered. So then she came back in February after having properly flyered. She presented to the zoning committee, mentioning that she installed the gate because she and her husband, the newborn, had safety concerns with the old gate system, and shootings on South Street have particularly gotten them concerned. So they went out to a company and got this gate installed. They were not aware that the gate required a variance or it required a permit. The installers did not tell them that it required a permit. So then they got a violation from the city, which brought them to the variance. Their direct neighbor at 702 Rodman Street made a statement that he does not like the gate, that it's ugly, that it blocks his view, that the previous gate matched previously, and that the prior two owners didn't have a problem with the gate. They did, and also mentioned that he likes the couple. The height restriction should be enforced, and that he blames the company that sold it and installed it without prior permission. There was also someone mid-block who spoke. They said that they did not mind the gate because there are 4 other people on the block who have similar gates. So it was a kind of curious discussion for us, because there was slight opposition to it, but we weren't really we were concerned with asking some people to tear this down who had put it up without trying to kind of pass a fast one on anyone. So we went back to the zoning committee with it, and we are recommending non-opposition to the variance. I will mention that the recommendation was unanimous. So there was all those were recommending non-opposition. I'm gonna unshare.
All right.
So
Thanks for the background, Jonathan. I think unless there's any questions or further case, I guess I'll make a motion to recommend non-opposition consistent with the zoning committee recommendation.
I guess we should ask her if there's any questions from any of the other board members before we call for a vote on it.
Yep.
The other point that Jonathan alluded to was that there are actually 3 others on the middle of the block that look pretty much like it from what we can see, and that the owner sent out 100 and some letters, and nobody responded except for the one person, unfortunately, that is not happy with it. But nobody else came and really voiced an opinion based on the letters that we're aware of at any rate.
I think we can vote on it.
How about a second? Peter, all right. All those in favor, non-opposition. All right. Deb, you okay? Thank you. All right. Next one.
Drew, one next one, and that's the only thing to vote on. While during the meeting, a woman who lives on the 1200 block of Rodman introduced herself, and she will be, Bob, I think she has either 2 or 3 properties on the block that'll be coming in front of us for Airbnbs, our favorite thing. I have not seen. Yep, we informed her that she faces an uphill battle, to say the least. But we have not seen the RC. I've not received the RCO notices yet, so there's not an official meeting scheduled.
Oh, my old block. I wonder who that is. Bob. All right.
Can I ask a question there? Actually, Jonathan, just while you're speaking about Airbnb licensing, is there a publicly visible list that's kept up to date by the city of Airbnbs that are licensed?
I don't know. I can ask if such thing occurs.
I just think it would be helpful because it's something that sort of crops up quite often as a question from neighbors and residents generally, who think, well, is that a legal one or is it an illegal one?
So
I mean, all I can say is
to reference that.
If it's in a residential district, which is the majority of our district, shall we say, south of Locust, then it's probably not allowed. As far as I know, there's 2 that are legal, which are the 2 that we've allowed in 3 years. So basically any other one would be illegal if it's in a townhome. That would be the short version of it.
Mm-hmm. The only way it could be legal is if it came through our zoning committee, if it's in Wash West.
Correct. Well, yeah, if it's not the only types of zoning that allow it are, shall we say, larger commercial districts. So on Walnut Street, Airbnbs would probably be legal.
Right. Because
Barbara, you had a question?
Without being too specific, there's one that is clearly operating partially as an Airbnb on the 1100 block on Spruce. So it would be,
if you can,
be useful.
The city is getting better about enforcing that. So if you can get the addresses, we'll see what we can do. Barbara, you had a question?
So I remember maybe it was 2 years ago that wrote a non-opposition letter. I think they were Airbnbs that you wanted them to, that needed to sunset after
That's
One-
correct. That
1 or 2
that-
years.
2 years, that's absolutely correct, Barbara. And that's, everyone should know that in the rare instances that we are in non-opposition, it's a 2-year temporary use, and we have a minimum stay of 2 nights, which prevents like the party house problems
Yeah.
that occurred on. And the main criteria for us is that there can't be existing complaints and that it can't be removing an otherwise viable residence from the neighborhood.
Right. How do you keep track? Do you keep track and know when the time is up and they sunset and find out whether the person has stopped doing the Airbnb? How do you enforce or patrol that?
Let me find that out, because I think you're probably right, Barbara. The one that we asked is probably close to it, so it's something
Yeah.
worth asking to see if it's just automatically, if they get a notice from L&I stating that their license is no longer good. I can follow up on that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Also, anybody should be able to go to Atlas at phila.gov and look up individual properties and see if they have a license on it. It should show up there under zoning or licenses.
Okay,
As well.
all right. Good. Anything else? That's it for zoning, Jonathan, right? Okay. All right. I think that covers the committee and the reports. Any announcements by anyone? And if
I guess
not,
I'll talk about a couple of things.
oh, Katie, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, you talked about membership, but not community events, please.
The only thing upcoming is the plant exchange official date is April 13th, rain date April 14th. That is April 13th is a Saturday. We'll be at Con Park between 10 and 1. If you've come for the plant exchange before, it'll be the same as it has been the last 2 years. If you've ever been there, you can take a little time to trim your plants or start some seeds or start propagating things. Bring anything you want in a container that you don't mind giving away. So one year somebody brought clippings in seltzer cans, and that was fine. It worked. With a little water in it, and take a plant, leave a plant, bring a few plants, go home with a few plants, tools, pots, whatever you want. Yeah, it's a fun event. And I guess that's all for now.
Drew, I just mentioned that as we're talking about plants, as I put in the newsletter that went out yesterday, we are actually giving away plants. You don't even have to exchange. On this Saturday morning, the garden team for Louis Kahn Park will be digging up hostas because they're not native and they've kind of overtaken some of the beds in Louis Kahn Park. So there'll be several to give away between 11 and 12:30 on Saturday morning. You just need to turn up. I think we'll even have bags for you to take them away in.
All right.
They're hardy, they're well established, and
Yes.
so they should transport very easily, either to a bed or to a pot.
Good. Thank you, Peter. Let me just see, Lynn, we're going to come up for community comments, questions, any, what we're going to, I think, are there any other announcements or board business? Sort of officially, then we'll invite any questions or comments from any members that are here. And Lynn, we'll go back to you. Go ahead. You can start us off.
I wanted Katie to talk about the knitting program and then the other idea we talked about this afternoon or this evening.
Yes, sorry, I did skip over the Wash West Knits, which the first working meeting on February 20th was a lot of fun. I mean, people were so happy to be there. People who didn't know each other at all just sat down and started working. Lynn tried to teach me to knit. It was like brain work. So, but if you want to come and try to learn, there are folks there who are willing to help you. We will be meeting again on the 3rd Tuesday of the month, which is, I should know the 19th. So that's next Tuesday. It's at in the community room at the Starbucks that's on Walnut Street right at 12. You don't have to buy anything from Starbucks to be there. They're not going to come in and ask you to buy a coffee or a beverage or anything else. So don't worry about that. And then we're talking about maybe starting up a little walking buddies program, which goes hand in hand with a lot of other things that are in the works here and sort of safety things. We're gonna stay tuned for a meeting date, an organizational meeting. If you have ideas about this or interested in it, just a way for neighbors to get with another one or more other neighbor for a walk around the neighborhood for exercise, or maybe you jog and you'd like to have a jogging buddy, or you know, you just like to make a friend, or maybe you can pick up some litter on the street while you're walking around. Walk the dogs together if, you know, if dogs go together. I don't know, I don't have a dog, but that's you know, in thought process, look out for that.
All right. All right, thank you, Katie. All right, so if you anybody, I think we'll open it up. Jill, yeah, you can, if I see your hand in the block, calling you, otherwise use Zoom thing. Go ahead, Jill, and then we'll come to you, Lynn. I'll try to go in order.
Okay, hi, everybody. I assume everybody on this call knows that the Civic did not take a stand with the arena. And I would like to, well, I have a few questions, but the main one is, since it seems like you're not the Civic board members are not representing the residents, I'd like to know who you are representing.
Okay.
Like who you're representing, and that you decided not to take a stand, even though X% of the residents who responded to things say they're not for it. So I just would like to know a little bit about the thought process. Which,
Okay.
you know, obviously
Maybe,
people are
Yeah,
disappointed.
Russell, do you want to
yeah, I think
go
that's
ahead.
potentially something I can speak to. So thank you for that question, Jill, and I can totally understand you know, why this is something you'd be asking about. Various members of the board feel that their duty as an elected representative of the community is to consider multiple signals in decision making. So that includes community input, but also their own judgment and, you know, the input they're getting from, you know, people that they consider experts. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect about the survey is that some members of the board, and I'm one of these members, I'm a professional social scientist, data scientist, spend a lot of time thinking about surveys and, you know, how well a survey sample represents a population. Some of us had concerns about the representativeness of the survey. So for example, you know, we're concerned that it may have undersampled renters or younger community members, for example. So for future surveys, you know, surveying is, I think, can be an important tool. For future surveys, what we might do is ask participants to provide demographic information so that we can compare that to the broader Wash West community, and then maybe even use certain survey weighting techniques that professional polling firms like Pew Research use. So a little bit of, you know, a mea culpa on my part. You know, this is something I know I should have thought about and noticed ahead of doing the survey.
I have to interrupt. This all sounds great. This is all going to be built before you guys get it together. And you know what? I understand surveys. We all understand surveys, and we know they only represent the people who responded, but you did the best you could. And if you couldn't reach anybody, you couldn't reach everybody. Everyone knows what's going on with the possible building of the arena. And if they were concerned, they would write to the Civic. They would come to a meeting.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of concern about.
I think it's actually bullshit what you're saying, and I'm really disappointed in your answer too. And I'm done.
Okay.
I hope other people speak up, but I don't want to say anything else.
That's fine. I'll say one more thing about that, and then, you know, maybe we can get to another question, which is that, you know, I have questions about who knows the Civic exists. I mean, there is documented.
This is not the
social-
time to figure that out, though. This is not the time to figure that out.
Can I jump in for a minute? So it seems like the steps that we took should actually be used. I don't think that we should be backtracking and, questioning the survey, because that should have been done day one before the survey was put out. We have the data, and I think if you're a social scientist, you should know that no data is fully representative, but that's the best that we can do. And it's really disappointing that the board, finally takes a stance to say that you're not taking a stance. And I guess my question is, if you're not going to take a stance, what's the difference between no stance and a passive agreement to let this be developed?
Well, we're not saying we're never going to take a stance. I mean, there, new information.
Too late.
But then what else do you need? And what else do you need to take a stance? You got overwhelming 75% of people in opposition. And if that doesn't agree with the interests of individual board members, then maybe you shouldn't be serving on the board.
Can I ask a question?
We never promised to make. We're not. I don't quite know where this backtracking concept comes from, because when we individually stood for election, we know, and when the commitment was made to take a survey, there was never a promise that the board would take a position as a result of it. You may have inferred
on things all the time.
That we were going to take a position, but that wasn't. That was never the promise. What we have done is represent the sentiment and the figures in that survey to the city, which is what we did promise to do, and what we were also asked to do by the city. So in that respect, we have done our job, we've done our duty. And I wouldn't argue, and I don't think anyone on the board argues, that our job is done, but we have done what we said, what we were asked to do, and what we said we would do. We have not backtracked. We've done that job, and I think we've done, and two members of the board particularly, who've spent hours and hours working on garnering community sentiment through a public meeting and through the survey, and that's Marissa, the deputy president, and Tammy, the president. They have particularly, they've gone beyond to do their job, regardless of their own opinions. They have ensured that community sentiment has been represented to the city. Councilman Squiller is well aware of what the sentiment is in the community in Wash West. And that is the result of the board doing its job.
But you take positions
Andrew,
on all the time.
Ethan, I think I'm just going to ask that people who want to speak, because everybody can, just raise your hand in the chat.
I'm on the phone. I can't raise my hand.
What's that?
So my understanding is that there was.
Andrew, you're next.
I was going to say, let her speak on the phone.
Okay.
She can't raise her hand, so.
I appreciate that. I understand there was no direct impact study.
Who's speaking? Do you mind?
My name is Lisa. I live in Wash West. I've been here for decades.
I'm sorry?
It seems like there was no impact study on Washington Square West for the stadium. And we already know that stadiums in downtowns just create cavities and gut it out. So why did they not do an impact study on the impact on Washington Square West's footprint with regard to a stadium? We've had the wonderful flower show, we've had the car show, we've had the parades, and you can see that twist and turn and add to traffic and people trying to get to the hospital. I just don't get it. I know they want it, but that's just too bad. They should, I personally feel that it should go to Camden, where they don't use their training facility now.
Okay.
Will there be an impact study on Washington Square West if the stadium goes forward? There's no information.
I don't think anybody's discussed a training studio in Wash West, so I don't think that's on the agenda of anything I've ever heard about.
Talking about 76th Place, there was no impact study on Washington Square West.
Now we did bring that up to Councilman Squilla, that
So you can't recommend. You don't even know how it'll affect you. We already know 75% are against, and you still don't even know what it would do, yay or no.
I'm not sure I follow you, but
it sounds like you're just trying to do a horse and pony show as opposed to saying, this is what we understand the possible impact would be for Washington Square West in regard to 76th Place. You don't even have it, but you have the voice of the people, and you won't support. Sometimes you just have to go with the democracy as opposed to the money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think I'll mostly just echo points that have already been made. But, you know, a lot of us voted in that survey under the impression that our voices were going to influence how the board was going to come out on this stadium issue, and clearly that isn't really the case. I mean, I understand the arguments you're making about putting that information up on Instagram, wherever someone may be able to find it, several layers deep. But, you know, you are a registered RCO that has authority to make statements, and it does mean something different coming from the board than just putting up, we did a survey. And I think that actually speaks to the point that Russell was making before about survey design and all that. That said, I think, you know, you could design this survey, you could fix this survey, you could run this survey many times. I think every time you're going to find that the neighborhood does not want this. And I think that one of the things that the board's refusal to take an individual vote on this is obscuring the fact that there are members of the board who are opposed to the arena, and there are members of the board that are pro-arena but don't want to go on the record, don't want to hold a vote, indicating that they don't care about what the neighborhood's position on this is. So I think, you know, whoever is holding that up is doing a disservice to other members of the board and making it monolithic to cover up the fact that there isn't solid agreement on this issue.
There's no cover up. There's no cover up.
Then why don't you take a vote?
I'd love to know how people voted, actually. Is that public?
Yeah.
There has been no vote. No vote has been taken on the issue.
And why?
Without voting?
There's been no vote. No.
Vote. So how do
How could you get to a position without a vote?
That's right.
I don't understand. If there's no vote, there's no position.
We have not
legally
taken a position.
You did come to the conclusion that you weren't going to make a statement, which must have required some kind of vote, some kind of consensus to take that position.
We have made a statement. The statement was in it was in the newsletter at the beginning of this month, and it was in the newsletter newsletter update yesterday. It's also been communicated publicly.
Yeah, that's not helpful.
What was the decision-making process to do that?
The board had a discussion. The board had a discussion about how it wanted to communicate its position.
And there was unanimous agreement.
It's not a position on the issue. But it is a statement of what the process that the board has undertaken to garner the sentiment of the community and present it to the city as we had been asked to do. So we were completing the process that particularly Councilman Squiller had asked us to go through. That is why most of this work has been done, because Councilman Squiller made it clear that he expected to hear from this Civic. And the process over the last 6 months of second half of last year was a follow through on that request and the promise that we made as a board to come back to him.
Thank you.
He is now satisfied that he has heard from our RCO through that process. And the statement that is in the newsletter that went out yesterday and at the beginning of the month is clarification by the board of what it has done and what it continues to do, and that we haven't reached a position where we're saying we're never going to take a vote, but for the moment, we're not taking a position.
That does feel like it's inconsistent, though, because you're saying that you did your duty in presenting the outcome of this poll and also subsequently issued the statement that the board is not taking a position on it. So what does Squilla think the RCO thinks about this? Because that's two different things that are not the same.
I'm not sure where this inconsistency is.
You just said that you took the results of the survey and you put them online, and despite that, The RCO has chosen to issue the statement that you're not going to take a position at this time. Those are two inconsistent things because the board is saying we have this information and yet we're not taking a position on it. So that, I mean, if nothing else, that looks very weak to Squilla from a bargaining standpoint.
Well, what are we bargaining on? What are you trying to bargain on?
I don't understand why
Our
you don't get
neighborhood,
it.
we're bargaining on the quality of life in our neighborhood.
It sounds, somebody described it as the board voted against the members.
The board has not voted. Why does everyone keep saying the board has voted?
And why not?
You have voted by taking a
Okay,
non-stance.
guys, we're not going to have a free-for-all. Everybody can talk, but only one at a time, and you must raise your hand. Philip, you're next.
Looking beyond this immediate 76 arena issue, the board apparently does not have a code of ethics. The board apparently does not have a written policy of conflict of interest. Organizations of this type, of which I've been a member and a board member for a number of years, are very good nonprofit organizations about being sure that the voting members of the board do not have conflicts of interest on issues that come before them. This organization has ignored repeated requests to have them vote a conflict of interest policy, adopt it, and carry it out. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Ethan has his hand. Let's just, Ethan, I'm going to come right back to you. I just want to make sure no one else that hasn't had a chance to talk gets a chance to speak. Go ahead, Ethan.
All right. So I guess I have a couple follow-up questions after this kind of frenzy of comments. So I am one of the community members who is against the arena. I'll just make that clear. I'm part of that 75%, which is quite large. And I'm just wondering, if hearing that 75% of your community members is not enough for you all to take a vote, like you do on a lot of things, to say that you represent these, 75 overwhelming, percent of voices, what is it going to take then? Because I mean, representing the Sixers, you're not representing the developers. We're the people that you're here to represent. And I just don't understand, what it's going to take. This has been a really frustrating process for a lot of us. You are in some way representing our voices. And if you're going to say, here, let us hear your voices, and then you kind of disavow us, I don't understand. It's just really frustrating. And I think that even people on the board understand that as well. And I just feel like we're kind of running through hoops with you all.
So Ethan, first of all, I totally can understand why this is frustrating. I think I have to repeat one point, which is that you said 75% of community members, and I don't think I really got to finish this point before. You said 75% of community members are against this. I mean, it's 75% of the sample, and we know from social science, political science research that the people that are engaged in civic organizations like this are not representative of their broader community. Like, we know that from peer-reviewed political science research. And so there is really, and we know in what ways the people that come out for these kinds of organizations and surveys are skewed and are not representative of the survey. And it's not that hard to make certain inferences about how that bias translates into opinions on development, urban change, all kinds of things like that. So, thinking about okay, what's the voice and the preference of the people that don't know that the Civic exists, didn't know that our survey exists, didn't do it. It's not that hard to make inferences that yeah, maybe it would still be a majority, probably would still be a majority opposed, but it probably wouldn't be a landslide. Okay, so that's
Russell, I understand that, and I understand how surveys work, and we do it in elections, we do it to make decisions, and honestly, that's the best tool that we have to survey a large population. And I feel like since you all got the data, you're no longer reading inside of it, but you're reading everything that's outside. You're like, what don't we know? And why don't you just work with this information that you do know? Because you can't do everything perfectly, but you have, I think, a really good sense of where your community stands. And you take surveys on things all the time. So maybe just stop taking surveys then if you don't think that they're representative. I just feel like these are these hoops that you're putting us through.
Well, yeah,
Let
I
me
mean,
finish.
again,
You ask us, let me finish. You ask our opinions, and then you say, well, let's take a step back. Your opinion doesn't matter because all these other people don't know about us. And also the thing is that this has really, enraged a lot of people, the Sixers stadium itself. And so I think that you're probably getting many, many, many more voices in this survey than you would get on anything else, including bike lanes, zoning, and things like that. So I'm asking, like, what is going to be enough for you to make a decision? Because this is how you do it all the time, and I don't understand what's lacking here.
well, so two things. First of all, again, as I said, like, a little bit of mea culpa. Like, if I had thought more critically about the survey at a time, I would have suggested we measure demographics and things like that. And then we would have, we could potentially do some weighting. We could think about, how representative is this of the community. We as a board could have decided ahead of time, okay, if the results come out this way, this is what we'll do. If the results come out this way, this is what we'll do. I think those are the things and some lessons we've learned. And I hope we apply those lessons moving forward.
No, and Russell,
yeah.
and I understand that, but that's why I feel like everything's kind of getting walked back here because you took the survey. It's imperfect, but no survey is perfect. And you have some pretty strong data. Like, what else do you need, And
well, I think we just have to disagree about the strength of the data, frankly. I mean, I think, and the other thing I want to say, and is that, and I'm not sure this point has been made yet, that that statement we made is not necessarily the final thing we as a board will have to say about the agreement.
It's passive agreement right now that this can be built. If you're saying we are not taking a stance, you're stepping out of the way of the developers and saying we're not going to be a problem. I know that we have 75% of people against this, but just don't worry about them because we'll ignore it.
It's a fucking small survey.
Sorry, I couldn't tell if sorry, say that again, Ethan.
I'm just saying that, like, you got outstanding, data here. And it feels like to abdicate responsibility and say that you aren't taking a position, that you're saying to the developers, we're getting out of the way. We know that our community is against this, but we won't make that a problem for you. That's how I feel as one of your community members that you are supposed to be representing.
I am hearing you, and I think we just disagree about, the quality of the data.
Okay, but then let me ask you this. I have a follow-up. What's the difference between this survey that you take and every other survey that you've ever done?
I'm not deciding policy and land use decisions with other surveys that I've done. I mean, honestly, I could, like, when I, as a psychologist, have run studies, it's on, I don't know, honestly, dude, we're getting into like a very nitty-gritty discussion about psychology, but when I have done studies about psychology that maybe use a convenient sample of college students or people that are doing, for pay online study, things like Amazon Mechanical Turk or Prolific, if you know what I'm talking about, like, it's about things that are very low level, like vision or basic decision making, things that we think probably don't differ.
Yeah, but I think that you're eschewing my critique here. It's not with the survey because the survey's already taken and the people have already spoken. It's like what you're deciding to do with the survey, and we don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of like what you do in your profession and the surveys that you take there. This is about the arena and people's lives. I just don't get it. It's like, what I'm asking, what else do you need? And that's all I have. It's really frustrating.
Thank you, Ethan. Lynn, go ahead.
I couldn't find my raise hand function for some reason. But, in many organizations and in many neighborhood organizations, there would be a membership meeting called. They would take a vote at the membership meeting, and people would raise their hands, yay or no, and then the ayes have it or not, and then the decision is made. This was even more complete by that, by including people, asking them by email as well. So it seems to me that it's very peculiar that the board wouldn't then take what the members of this organization, and we're not talking about the whole neighborhood, we're talking about the members of this organization have decided, and most of the members of this organization decided that it was not a good idea to have the arena. So like one of my friends just that was not involved in this at all just looked at it and saw, why is the board voting against what the survey results were? They're voting against the members. That's what it feels like, that the board is voting against the members because the members spoke. And so I mean, all this other side talk really makes no sense. If we're going to have any influence as an organization, it seems that we just took ourselves out of the picture. Like we have no influence anymore. I would hope that the Wash West would have influence on development decisions in the neighborhood. Already there's been a lot of bad decisions that have been made with what's been taking place in our neighborhood. I don't know if that's because we make no decision. I can give a few examples, like 12th Street Gym building, but I think that there's something very strange about the board not looking at the survey and saying the members are against this. And so therefore the neighborhood organization leaders should say, okay, the neighborhood voted, we're against it, and keep that position just like Chinatown did, and have and make that known that Wash West, which is right up against that stadium, is against it. There's really nothing else that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Josh.
Hi there. I was curious. So in reading the statement, I'm just going to read a sentence. So the decision reflects our desire to work collaboratively with all stakeholders to secure the best possible outcomes for our beloved neighborhood. I guess reading between the lines of the whole statement, I kind of got the feeling that maybe I'm sure you fully understand that it's most folks in the Civic are against it. And I got the sense that you were sort of like, you think that maybe giving a definitive no support statement would like be like politically non-advantageous, meaning that like we'd have more sway if we leave like stay sort of vague about our position and could maybe like get something out of it, which I think could actually be like a savvy move perhaps. And maybe maybe part of this political aspect is you can't tell me, like you can't tell us more, but I'm curious about what stakeholders you had in mind and what conversations you're going to continue to have. Because it sounds like, okay, you've maybe had all the conversation you need to with us, meaning like the members. So I'm curious who else you're going to talk to.
I guess I'd say, speaking for myself, I do agree with, my feeling is pretty much what you just explained, that once you say no, you're out of the conversation, and we're still in the conversation. I think and I'll speak just for myself, I'm not speaking for the board, but I think we did a good job of letting everybody in the community know what the community's feelings are. It was picked up by the Inquirer, it was picked up by every news organization. It's really pretty clear how the community perceives this, but it's still an ongoing project.
To put an even finer point on it, perhaps you guys thought that coming out in total opposition would be useless. It would just be us screaming into the void, wouldn't get us much. And this is perhaps, I'm just trying to see your way of coming at it. I think this could maybe be, you see it as sort of an inevitability. You couldn't perhaps make this all clear. You couldn't write that in the statement because that would give away the game a little bit. But now you're trying to like use the ambiguity to try and perhaps get, I don't know, the mechanism, perhaps like a community benefit agreement, but to be like use our endorsement as a way to get something out of something that we see as inevitable.
The community benefit agreement to me is an interesting question, and I really don't know how the board could go ahead with it, because to negotiate a community benefit agreement, there's an implied consent to some point because you're getting some money back. And I think this I don't know where the community goes on that. Do we want a community, if it goes ahead, do we want a community benefit agreement, or do we want to just walk away and say, no? I mean, the answer is just no, and we don't want to talk anymore. And if there's any benefit, we don't want to take any part of it.
Yeah.
That's a question that I don't think we have an answer to yet. And I don't know how people feel about that.
I guess to share one more personal thing. I know, so I attended the meeting where prior to the vote, when everyone spoke, we were all met in small groups together. I forget the way the question was worded, but the final question, something about like, if this was to happen, if the stadium is going through, what would I think the way Tammy phrased it was what our demands would be, you know, what do we really want out of this? And I guess I think maybe something I'm a little frustrated with sometimes is folks only seeing the negative, which I do understand. But if it was to come, if the stadium was an inevitability, I think it probably does make sense to try and reconcile with what we want. I know, especially for me, and the fact that we're going to be the stadium would be located especially on like a transit hub where so much of Philly's transit there. I think it would just be that would be an interesting opportunity as well. I don't know. I figured I'd want to share that as well.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Katie, do you want to go? And I'll come back to Andrew.
I just wanted to say, say something about what we talked about with the community benefits agreement and what the board, I believe what we basically said when the board talked to representatives from these 76ers developer folks is like, okay, so I know for sure what got said is that they had reached out to multiple groups in Chinatown, because there are a lot of RCOs in Chinatown. Like the primary one that is handling the zoning is PCDC, which is the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation, but there are a whole lot of them. And some of those organizations didn't want to talk with them at all. But the way it sounded like it was coming from the representatives of the Sixers is that just because these folks were not interested in talking, that they wouldn't still be part of that CBA. I mean, even if they're opposed, they could still be part of the CBA. And our board members sat around a table together and had a discussion. And I think that was part of what we talked about. Like, well, are we really acing ourselves out of any CBA if we decide to oppose the project? And I do believe that where we came down was, no, not necessarily. As long as we're engaged with them, there's no reason they should cut us out of the CBA. So I think the question about being having to, it's absolutely divided opinion among the board. I wasn't supposed to talk during this meeting. We sort of had designated question answerers, but the board is absolutely divided, and we did not take a vote. There was no vote, but we did decide not to take a vote, and that vote was decided by consensus. There's a lot of consensus decisions that happen here, but it doesn't mean that I guess there's the definition of consensus. Does that mean unanimous? I don't know, actually, but like, it doesn't. Okay, so it wasn't, even if this is the decision that we came to, it wasn't unanimous, but it was. Now I'm rambling. You guys shouldn't let me talk. This is why I wasn't supposed to talk. Like,
I wouldn't say you weren't supposed to talk. I mean, we just didn't want to have a free for all, but I value your opinion. I'm happy to hear you talk, and
but it's really interesting that like we didn't vote, but coming to a consensus is almost like a vote without using the word vote or without having to write down a ballot. And because it wasn't a vote, it wasn't public, that's not part of our minutes. When we have a vote, that is part of our minutes, if that helps define some things for you guys. Yeah, I'm gonna stop now.
Okay, thanks, Katie.
Wait, no, I know what I was gonna say. Can I say something else?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's like, okay, and sorry about all our data scientists in the room, but you guys, it's like, we're trying to turn an emotionally charged issue and reduce it down to a scientific answer so that we don't have to deal with the emotions. And like, that's not fair to our members. Now I'm done.
Andrew,
Yeah, so the last thing I was going to say, or I guess really ask, was because someone said, this wasn't the last thing you expect to have to say about this question. So I am very curious, what are the next steps that the board is going to take? You put the information from the poll online. You've issued the statement that you're not taking a position at this time because you're awaiting additional input, presumably from whatever impact studies are still forthcoming.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to make a decision? Like, can you tell us at this time, like, what is going to factor into that decision? Because, I mean, Russell said this at the very beginning. You have this data. You've decided, or some of you have questions about the quality of the data. Separate from that, people don't agree with it. People don't agree with the consensus opinion. So I'm just curious, like, what comes next? And is it just going to be like your opinions regardless of the polling?
does anyone else? I mean, my response to that would be that there is no defined next step. I don't know if the city has issued something recently about their studies. I think Wash West, like we tried to get some Wash West perspective added to the studies that appeared to not include Wash West. They were supposed to be the end of the year, then the end of January, then the end of February. I don't know when they're going to be released. I also can't promise that that's going to trigger anything. I'm just speaking about what I know or don't know. And as far as I'm concerned, from what I've heard on the board, there's no defined next step, and that could be good or incredibly frustrating, for the members. But we have not talked about that to my knowledge.
We're certainly waiting to see the outcome of that consultant's report that's been much delayed. And we'll be looking at that closely. I think it's fair to say that.
Do you intend to take an additional position after more information comes out? Like, or is that something you're just trying to wash your hands of at this point?
No, we haven't. We said it. We haven't. I think this is true to the statement that Tammy signed and was in our newsletter this month and released publicly. We've said that we have not ruled out taking a position in the near future, if it's appropriate. So, we haven't defined a process as a board from here on. We haven't defined next steps, but we are still listening and waiting. We're very interested to see what that impact report to the city is going to say. And it is possible, it hasn't been ruled out that we will take a position in the future, in the near future, but that's my words, that's my paraphrase really of what I think the position is on the board.
Can I clarify? So they're going to do an impact on Washington Square West community? They're going to find out what will happen to our property values or the safety? They're actually going to do an impact study on Wash West?
I don't think it's a separate impact study, but we requested that they add the impact on Wash West to the studies that were already underway. So it's not a unique study. And someone else on the board, if you know more.
I can provide some clarity there, maybe based on what we heard from the Planning Commission in previous meetings with them. They said there were multiple studies. There were 3 studies. One is community impact, which I think is what you're asking about, and they said that primary focus is Chinatown. That was.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, community impact, I'm sure the people there are in an existential crisis.
Right. So there's that study.
But my thing is, as far as Wash West is concerned, we lost the 12th Street gym. We're getting all these other new buildings put up. We're losing our sense of place. I have no opposition to growth, but wise growth, not because some guy decided that he's just got to have it downtown. It makes no sense. And I read recently that the city was negotiating changing state roads to municipal roads.
Right.
And what would be the financial impact on us as a city to pay for something that the Sixers claim that they would be paying for. So far, they're not talking about paying for anything except for a lot of attention. I'm curious about what's going to happen in our historic downtown with a big stadium there, and what it will do to people getting to the hospitals, getting back and forth shopping, whatever, security, and a gaping hole.
I
half the
totally
year.
understand those concerns. So those are some of the questions we had about the studies, like what is in them, that's why we were asking, why are we not included, or what are the boundaries of these? And all they told us is that the community impact study is focusing on Chinatown. There's a transit study and there's an economic benefit study. And that's
Okay, so it
as
sounds
much
like
as
you
we
really
got.
actually can't give an opinion except for no, because you don't have any more information except that the community doesn't
Correct.
want it.
Because we don't have those studies, and we don't know when they're coming, and I can't tell you what the boundaries. And we've tried to ask them, are you including Patco in our neighborhood? And they weren't even sure of that. So we're still waiting for responses from the Planning Commission on that as well.
Okay, I believe I was next.
Oh, go ahead, Lynn. Yep.
In my experience, when a neighborhood takes a position on development or an issue, then we do have more influence. And if we say no, we have even more influence, because if it happens despite us saying no, we have more negotiating power to say, okay, we don't want it, but if you deal with this, 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 and this, then at least it's something that we can, if you deal with the hospital situation, if you deal with the such and such situation, if you move this over here, then we have influence. If we say no position, then we have no influence. So that's what I can't really get beyond. Why the neighborhood organization would say we don't want to have any influence over this decision. It's just very strange to me, and I think that a lot of organizations exist that start on one issue. This issue has been something that has energized the members of this organization and new members more than anything else in the long time that I can even think of. And it seems that instead of shutting people down, that this is a chance to move ahead with the yes/no survey. It doesn't have to be we all know about technical surveys, but this was a yes/no question. The members spoke, the members said no, and the board shouldn't go against what the members said. They should say, we're against it. This organization, maybe not every single person who lives in the neighborhood, but this organization members said no. And therefore, if it happens anyway, we have a chance to say, okay, we said no, you're doing it anyway, city, but we're going to have an influence over how it affects our neighborhood, blah, 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 blah. So it's just some of these other conversations, I don't understand why the board doesn't understand this stuff. It's pretty basic.
Okay. Go ahead, Ethan, last comment, unless someone else.
Well, I think
wants to hop in.
there were some other people who had questions in the chat that I think we should probably address, or that you should probably address too. But I'm wondering, so, you've heard the community, and now we're finding all of these issues with the data or everything that wasn't included in the data. And that's the best that we have right now with the resources that you have. And so going forward, are we just supposed to forget that this survey happened? Because I don't think that that is really helping with the legitimacy of the board or future board members or the structure and power of the board going forward. I think you can tell that your community members are pretty exasperated. I think we can tell that you're all pretty exasperated with us too. And I just what gives, what do we need? It seems like you are abdicating responsibility and the power that you have to be an influencer in the neighborhood. And I just this really is not in your interest. Taking no position is just paving the way for the development to happen if, things already haven't been decided. And I think you can tell by the length of this meeting and the amount of voices that have spoken that people really don't want this. And you can't say we're taking, data from people and then say, actually, it doesn't, serve our interests, so we're going to ignore it.
So that's not a question, it's a comment. But I guess it's like, you know, you have the data, so what are you going to do with it? That's my question. What can you do with the data besides taking no stance? Because because we don't want no stance. We don't want no stance. I think you can tell that.
So just two things. I think, you know, first of all, you know, while it is certainly difficult to have these kinds of conversations, I think all of us on the board understand how important it is as sort of members of the board who were elected or appointed to have these kinds of conversations with the members of the community, even if especially if we disagree. So, you know, I don't think, you know, again, even though it's difficult, I think that all of us recognize that it's important to be here. Second, I think that, you know, I don't think we're forgetting about the survey results. You know, we didn't hide the survey results, you know, after we got them, even though, you know, some of us have had concerns. Like we did publish those, like we put those in the statement. They're on social media. They went to Squilla. So, you know, that's out there now. And I think that's, you know, if anything, right, like, you know, that's what gets remembered and noticed, not like these concerns that some of us have about, like, you know, sample representativeness, like, and so I think that you know, the survey is making an impact.
Well, let's say this: if the Sixers, God forbid,
the survey
does get
effectively,
built, can I respond? I'm just going to say, if the survey, you know, whatever, if the Sixer Stadium does get built, what people are going to remember is all of you. That's all. And, you know, you understand the gravity of the situation. You took pretty much the worst position that you could have. And I don't really see a way forward with all of you, you know, as decision makers here, if you're not actually going to use your power to make decisions. Like, having a conversation about taking no decision is a decision. A consensus, a vote, all of that are just synonyms for decision making. And it seems like you've already taken your decision.
Okay, let's see, Jill, I see you. I'm just making sure. Okay, go ahead. Jill, yes.
Two things. I know I wasn't going to say anything, but it's hard for me.
That's all right. Yep.
I noticed on the Instagram post where you posted your letter of no stance, and on your Facebook post and on this group, no one has spoken up saying, yes, we're for the arena. Just pay attention to that, because I think that's really important. I noticed that when I first went to the Instagram post, like, everyone commenting was, what, I can't believe it. No one said, but don't you understand? So I think that's important to think about. And the last thing I'll say for this meeting, I think, is all these quality of life issues that we talk about, when the arena is built, forget about it. You won't have any. That's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you all.
Are you going to address the questions in the chat?
I'm not going to read all them. I'm sorry. I should have asked someone to go through them, but unfortunately we've, I mean, someone else on the board, if I can't tell what's been addressed.
One question I can pick out, because it's showing up now, is from Philip, which says, which board members are prepared to sign a no conflict of interest statement? So that's something that I think we can address. We can't address it now on the call exactly, but we can certainly discuss it. And I would think, my guess, speaking for myself, my guess is that we would all be very happy to do that.
Yes.
Because no board member is taking money from anybody. We're all doing this as volunteers. And I think it would, you know, I want to say this in a level voice and not sound cross. Sometimes I can sound cross when I get warmed up. But you know, not only are we all volunteers, but it can be a pretty thankless task doing what we do. And there weren't exactly a huge number of candidates, and there rarely are a huge number of candidates actually standing for election to this board. So, you know, we do what we can. And we do it out of goodwill for no payment.
All right. Thank you all. Hopefully Tammy and Marissa are back next month. I got good notes, and I appreciate you all attending. Motion to adjourn.
Would it
Or
be
we can-
possible to take the items from the chat and just address them later?
I think,
Like-
yeah, there is a way to copy or download that, right?
Yes.
Somebody
It's on the recording as well, I
can do
think.
that, and that's on the recording as well. Thank you, Lynn. That's a good suggestion.
Here's a quick one I can address. Rachel says, has anyone reviewed the bylaws and rules? Oh, sorry, for dissolution. So actually the only way to dissolve the RCO is by a 3/4 vote of the board. Members don't get a vote in that. Only board members can decide to dissolve the RCO.
I think just one other thing, a couple of people in the chat have asked, what the individual board members' positions are on the arena. So I think I don't think that's something for this call. We're not entirely represented here, although we are quorate. But I mean, I think everyone has an opinion of some sort, whether it's pro or against or neutral. And everyone can speak for themselves.
I want to mention at the last election, when the question was asked to the people running, I think one of which was you, but were people for or against the arena? That was a question that was asked before the vote was taken. And most of the members who were up for election, board members up for election, said they would go with the majority of the group. That's not what happened.
Well, I know I didn't say that. And I know I lost some votes because I remember there were 20 votes for each of us and I got 18. So presumably 2 people voted against me because I would not take a position at that time. And so, but that is a good point. I mean, we only had 20 people come out to vote.
I think you asked board election.
And
I think you asked me that question when I was
the people that were running did say, we will go with the majority. That was their words specifically.
Yeah, I won't dispute you that I know it wasn't my words, at least I hope it wasn't.
No, it wasn't your words, Robert,
Okay.
but it was Peter's, I think. It was other people's.
No, I
too,
said I would listen, but I hadn't taken a position, and I hadn't taken a position. I wasn't taking a position.
But I wish more people would come out and run for the election. I would have been happy to have somebody run against me and presumably win. I'd be happy if somebody'd step up and take over for treasurer. I really don't have the time to do it. So, I mean, if people are willing to step up, there's places on the boards for people to come. I mean, we got a lot of people on this call, a lot more people than we actually had vote for us.
Do you want to talk about our one open seat and how someone could try to get that seat right now?
There's a procedure for that. Yeah, there is one open seat now, and there presumably could be more.
Yeah.
What is the procedure?
I think it's just submit an application to the board, a letter of interest, and the board can elect to fill the position.
Right. I think you can probably send that to info@washwestcivic.org, and that should go out to the executive board for review. And then I think the executive board decides whether or not to bring that candidate forward. Is that true?
I think that's the basic procedure. Jonathan might know better, being on the board as long as I have, or actually longer.
That sounds right. I can't remember if you actually need the executive approval or not.
Wouldn't it be
typically,
good idea
Right. Russell joined midterm and submitted a letter to the executive board, had a little interview, and then we had a board vote and voted him on.
Yeah, it's definitely a board vote, not an executive committee vote. It's a vote by the entire board. And if there's more than one candidate, then the board would have to select among the candidates available.
But the regular board election is every November. It should be the second Tuesday in November, unless that it happens to be election day, which it was a couple of years ago. So we pushed it. But you don't, it's, when you're running mid-term, you're voted on only by board members. But if you were running in November, you were voted on or not by the membership. So it's a bigger pool of votes that you could collect. But every board member has a 3-year term, and when your 3-year term is up, you can run again or you can decide not to. So there will be at least what,
Five.
five seats, maybe more, available in November for folks to run for.
And board members don't have any leg up. I mean, everybody runs equally, so there's no advantage to being on the board in terms of the ability to get reelected.
Right. So Teresa says which seats are coming up. Oh, you mean which people? Because I was going to say every seat is equal. It's not like we are running for the position of membership chair or anything like that. My term is coming up in November. Jonathan, because I know
And I will not,
together.
and I will not be running again. So my seat will definitely be open.
Would it be possible to put in the newsletter that there's a vacancy right now? Because that goes to a lot more people, and then there'd be a lot more applicants interested in filling in the appointed position.
Also, anybody who's a member in good standing can join a committee. I say it a lot, but we have a few folks on committees, and there's a few of them here, but you all can join committees, and that could be a way to get your voice heard a little more.
But yeah, we should definitely, I agree, whoever suggested putting it in the newsletter, if that's that would be Lynn. That's obviously the way to get the word out to the membership, because that hits the most people, and that would be the appropriate way, in my opinion, to handle it.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Because we should have a full board at all times if there's interested people. Then there's no meeting in August as a general rule. That's actually in the bylaws, I believe.
So speaking of meetings, our next meeting is what, April 9th? All right.
Anything else, Joe?
Okay to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, have a good night. Yep, bye-bye.
Yes, I'll do that, Eileen.